Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. My apologies for being a half hour late, but Matt had a conference call and we can't be talking over each other while we're trying to deal with stuff, so we just postponed this a little bit. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for tuning in half an hour later. And if you're watching this on replay, then it's all good, right? So hello everyone who is tuning in. I have some more information to share with you guys today. Our little coffee break on Monday, all about inks and that kind of thing, got a really good response, and I think you guys learned a lot. I hope you guys learned a lot. We could spend an entire day talking about inks and the different things they can do, and I know that is a request that is now on the table, so I have added that to my brainstorming list. So hopefully we can do much more of an ink 101 type session, that we've got a little bit more time set aside and all that kind of thing. So hello to everyone who's tuning in. There seemed to also be a fair amount of interest in all of the blending tools, and I will absolutely say that especially in the last year, ink blending and all the different tools and techniques and everything else have really become hot, I guess is the best word to say. It's on trend. It's easy to do because you really do need minimal supplies. You've already got your inks, but the other key piece to this is what blending tools that you want to use or choose to use. Maybe you've got them in your stash already. Maybe you want to try something new, and it can be a little bit confusing because there are a lot of options out there, and to some degree it is depending on what your project is or what kind of ink blending you want to do, whether it's just edging, whether it's creating whole backgrounds, whether it's using with a stencil. Sometimes that will determine what tool you use to apply the ink. The other thing that absolutely comes into play, and I've said this before, it's the same with ink, it's the same with adhesive, is it comes down to personal preference. So it's never ever a bad thing to have a few different tools in your toolbox, because over time you will figure out what your personal favorite is and what works best for your approach and your technique. Some of these things, and I think I said this last night in the Create at 8, with ink blending, your natural tendency is to press hard and get tons of ink coverage right away, but that's where your challenges are going to come into play. So the better thing to do with ink blending is to start light and build up. So as you can see, there is a wide range of tools that I have pulled out. There's even a few that I don't have in the screen here. And we're going to just very lightly touch on each one of those. I'll talk about the pros and the cons. I'll talk about my personal preferences. But remember, what I like isn't necessarily what you're going to like. So I do encourage you, before you go and buy 100 of any one thing, make sure you try it out first. Give it a try, see what you like, and see what's going to work best for you. So to start with, let's clear the slate here. Gonna move these guys off to the side, move this off to the side, move this off to the side, and we are going to be really left with two different tools. When I started crafting and when I started playing with ink and ink blending and everything else, these were the two tools that were really the only things on the market. And they are both very similar. There's just a slight, let's call it delivery difference, in that These are called finger daubers, and the reason why they're called that is literally because they fit on your finger. It does have a little sponge applicator, and this has more of a handle. It's got the wood block, and then it's got this piece of Velcro, which then takes the foam piece and makes it removable. So where this one really should be dedicated, minimum per color family, most people, because they're affordable enough, will dedicate one dauber per ink color. This one is meant to be interchangeable so that it's only your foam that is dedicated per color. So you really only need a handful of these. I call these handles. So where you might have a whole collection of finger daubers, and I didn't bring it upstairs, but there is actually a little storage case that you can keep these in as well. These being dedicated to a color. This one you really can get away with even just 2 handles, and then lots of replacement foams, once again per color or per ink type. So I will say that if you are using different types of ink, even if they're the same color, you don't want to mix and match. And that goes for everything across the board. If you have a foam for dye-based ink like the Gina K, do not use that same foam on an oxide ink, because that is a different formulation and is going to really mess up how you can go back and forth between the different tools. So like I said, these are what were around when I first started crafting, and they're ones that probably people are most familiar with. And I will say, when I'm particularly lazy, these are the ones that I have right at the ready, and they work really well on the paper. So I'm just going to grab a piece of paper and give you some little demonstrations here. Let's just use regular, no, let's use oxide, just because I think it's going to give us a bit of a bolder color. Pros and cons of the finger dauber. It is small and compact, so it is great for small areas or edging and that kind of thing. So if you just want to edge your piece of paper like this, it's easy to control. It's nice and small. It gives you just that little hint of color that you need where you need it. Excuse me, let me just grab a sip of water here. However, if I really want to cover this whole area, the problem with this is that it is small. And so you're going to get these little small circles, and the more you try to cover the area, it's just going to be a lot harder work. So it's not meant for large areas. The other thing the finger daubers are fantastic for are stencils. I think I used this one last week, but I'll just crack it open again. So if I've got heart stencils, sorry for the earthquake, again, just going in those areas, really easy with that finger dauber. So the size of the dauber is both a pro and a con. It depends on what your project is. The other thing I will say is that the foam pads on a finger dauber do not last forever, especially if you do a lot of edging like this. The sharp edge of your paper is going to break down that foam over time. So you will have to replace those from time to time, even if you are dedicating one per color. So just keep that in mind. If you do a lot of edging with the finger dauber, you want to have a nice stash of those handy in your collection. With the larger foam, you do get a lot more coverage. Now, I will say we did get some batches of these handles where this Velcro really didn't stick down. It's really only attached by a staple. So all I did, I took all my handles the other day, and all the ones that were starting to lift apart, I just took my hot glue gun, shot a little bit of glue underneath it, and then smoothed it out. And that'll keep it nice and firm, because as you can see, as you change your foams, they get a lot of wear and tear. So that way you keep your Velcro nice and flat. From an edging standpoint, again, the size is both a pro and a con. Whoops. And now I have ink on my hand. Let me just grab a baby wipe, one sec. Glad to have these always on hand. All right, nice and clean. So the size is both a pro and a con. It is probably too big. You can absolutely use it to edge distress as well, but you're not going to get the same type of control as you did with the little ones. But you can, it still works. And if you only want to have one particular tool in your stash, then that works well for that. From a blending standpoint, you're going to be able to get a lot more coverage quickly. But just like I said earlier, you want to start light and then build layers. And I hope I don't jiggle the table too much, but usually the idea is that you start off the paper and you just add layers and layers of color. So you can see I'm covering a whole lot more territory than with the finger daubers, with a lot less of those circle marks. Now, it's not perfect, and part of that, as with anything else, is practice. But because it is a solid edged foam, you are going to get little hints of circles. Do I know if there's somewhere you can get just the handles and not the foams? To my knowledge, no. They do, so let's call it a starter pack. You get 2 handles and 4 foams. So it's really not a lot of foams, and you're always, always, always going to need them. You can't, to my knowledge, you cannot just get the handles. Now you can get the replacement foams. You get 20 in a pack for that. So that is the difference between a finger dauber and the blending handles. Now, the other advantage to these blending handles is if you also play with alcohol inks, it's the same handle. You just use the felt pads as opposed to the foam pads when you are using alcohol inks. So absolutely, these handles can interchange between the 2 different mediums. Now, as time has gone on, the selection of these has changed a little bit. So from one of our European companies, we can get mini ones of these guys, and they also come with refill packs. So this is kind of in between in size. Just a personal preference, once again, comes down to what you're using your project for, and I guess to some degree what your storage space is like. I have also played with these, what I call pencil blending tools. This is also from Ranger. It comes in, I'm gonna say a 6-pack or a 5-pack, I can't remember. So you've just got that little teeny bit of foam, and when I've used them, I have not had any issue with that foam like tearing off or anything like that. But it doesn't hold a lot of ink. So the ideal use for this one is stencil work. If you're using the sponge daubers to apply ink, say to your stamp or to some different areas, this little guy definitely gives you just that little bit of ink. So totally there from a control standpoint and a targeting standpoint. Definitely not what you would want to use to create an entire background. So from a foam standpoint, those are your biggest options, and probably in the long run your more affordable options. If you are just getting started in ink blending, then this is probably a place to start. Thank you, Angel. The fact that Tim uses these for adding color to the edges of flowers. Great. And that goes absolutely right to that idea of control. and being able to target where your ink is going and getting into all those little nooks and crannies on a layered flower and that kind of thing. So those are your ranges with foam blending tools. Then things start to evolve and we get more choices and we get more options. And unfortunately, that means it gets a little bit more confusing. The next thing I'm going to show you are these guys. So these are stencil brushes. And this is the Tim Holtz version. This is the Vicki Boutin version. There are other ones out there. And they have all kinds of individual bristles. So it gives you a softer look than if you're using a solid piece of foam. But because of how they're structured, these, to my opinion, work better if you are simply doing stencil work. Again, you're going to have a lot of trouble because that surface tip is very narrow, getting a nice blend across a large area. But if you're just going into stenciled areas, little nooks and crannies, these tools work really well for that. Once again, it comes down to a personal preference. So if you happen to have a friend that maybe has one of these, definitely something that you want to, give it a try. But I would use these more for stenciling, and I'm sure they have their own purposes and techniques as well. Let me grab a sip of water, and then we're going to move on to the next evolution. All right. So I would say probably about 18 months ago, this kind of thing started to make its way into the marketplace. This is a Picket Fence branded blending brush. They have been inspired by makeup brushes that are out there, and what makes them lovely is that they are all individual bristles. I don't know if that shows very well on the camera, but they're all individual bristles, but they are very tightly and very densely packed, with a large surface area with which to blend. So compared to this, for example, here there are lots of bristles as well, but they're not very densely packed. And the more you push on them, the more they're gonna smoosh out to the side, and you're going to have a lot of difficulty getting nice even blending. With this, no matter how hard you push on it, you're not going to get that, smooshing is just the best word I can think of, that spread. So it gives you a lot more firmness behind your ink blending, and it helps you, because it's the individual bristles, you're not going to get those same kind of circle marks. Now, once again, I will absolutely caution you that everything comes with practice. So you may not get it right, and you still may get brush marks and everything else the first few times you do this. But the more you practice, the easier it's going to get. Now, with these particular blending brushes, and again, this is Picket Fence, then came Tailored Expressions, who came out with colored handles as opposed to the black handles, and their bristles, when they were new, were bright white. These have been well loved, as you can tell, and I'll get to that in just a little bit. So when they come, did I bring a brand new one? I did not. They are bright white, more like these guys. And so now there are various companies that have come out with their own blending brushes, and from a totally functional how they blend standpoint, I find that they are very similar. Where it comes down to is your personal preference in terms of, do you want a pink handle for your pink inks so you know which brush you're using when you use it? Do you like the white? I personally, and again, this could just be me, and you know what, some days it feels the same and some days it doesn't. I find that the Gina K ones are a little, just a teeny tiny little bit softer than the Tailored Expressions ones, but again, it could just be in the moment, because some days they feel the same and some days they don't. Matt says I'm imagining things. And with the brown ones, what I personally like about them is that they don't look as dirty. But that also makes it hard to know what color of ink you use that brush for. So it all comes down to preference. Let me grab, I'm going to grab my blue ink and use my Gina K brush. But again, just to show you how these work. Generally, the technique I have seen is that you hold the handle kind of in your fingers and you hold the brush head with your index finger and your thumb. I sometimes will go like this as well, just to give some nice pressure behind the head without pushing too hard. Now, I have also seen people who like to be back like this. So I encourage you to try different techniques. If this feels more comfortable to you and you get a better response, a better result, then color it that way. There's really no right or wrong. The other thing I'm going to show you, and I know there are going to be gasps in the audience, you really can't push too hard from a integrity standpoint. It'll affect how you blend for sure, but you can actually take your brush and go like this. How many of you gasped? How many of you gasped when I did that? It hurt me. It hurt me terribly the first time I did that. But these blending brushes are very sturdy and very stable. Not that I encourage you to keep doing that, because eventually it will break. But just know that if you're pressing really hard, you're not going to break instantly your brush. It's just going to affect how you blend. So let me just show you. And again, this is my Gina K brush that I'm using with my Gina K ink. You should absolutely keep your oxides separate from your dye-based inks. So I'm just going to ink it up here. And again, I'm just going to come in from the side and start blending. And this is a really pale color, so it's going to take a little while to build up that ink. But you can just see how nice and smoothly this is being applied to the paper. And yes, I'm causing earthquakes, and I apologize for that. And you can see every time I do this, I maybe hold my handle a little bit differently. But in comparison to the pink, where you can see in some places my circle marks, this is beautiful and smooth. So this gives you a lot of nice coverage. From a geography standpoint, I guess is the word. You're getting the same kind of surface area as the foam ones, but because of the individual bristles, they're just moving smoothly across the paper, and you're not fighting the hard edge of the foam. So all of these guys are going to work the same. You can interchange them. You can have some of each in your collection. Functionally, they all work fantastically. They give you that nice soft look to them. You can blend your colors. Once again, I will just reiterate, practice makes perfect. So if things don't work the way you want it the first time, don't give up on them. They're so much fun and they create such a beautiful look. Just practice. And even if you just take a scrap piece of paper like this and you just practice covering your entire area, you're going to get better. And that's something you can do if you're watching TV. You don't need to feel particularly creative. Grab your favorite color or couple of colors and away you go. Moving along. Just this year, actually, I guess it was the beginning of last year, it was introduced at Creativation in 2020, which was our last big in-person trade show. These guys came out. These are called more of an ergonomic blending brush, and conceptually, they are the same as these, in that they've got some really nice soft but densely packed bristles. I mean, you just want to sit and pet them. They just so soft. Once they have ink on it, please don't rub it on your face. And I will absolutely say that I've done that. My ink is transferring just a little bit, but they are just beautiful to work with. So while these work really great on smaller areas, if you are really getting into the ink blending and covering large areas of paper, this guy is beautiful to work with. You hold it differently. So this one, where there's a couple of different holds that you can do on it. This one, you're just going to palm it like you would your computer mouse. It's got a really nice handle, and that's why it's a little bit more ergonomic. So if you have trouble with arthritis and that kind of thing, this might be something for you to consider. Now this one I have used on oxide ink, so I'm going to switch colors here. I'm going to turn this around, and now I've got my mustard seed. So because these bristles are really densely packed, the ink is really just going to sit on the surface. And Rosalind says these work really well over embossed paper. Absolutely, you've got that nice flat surface, or even if you have embossed something yourself. So you could take like a floral stamp, use a clear embossing powder, and then go over this to create your background, and the embossed area will just resist and you'll see the white pattern in behind. So I'm going to take this into my yellow. And again, starting off the side, look at that. Look at how much coverage I'm getting. With just very little effort and very little ink. Now, like I was saying, because the ink is sitting on the surface, it's actually pretty easy to switch colors. So you don't necessarily need one of these for every single color. I'm just going to color off a little bit here onto my scrap paper, and that'll remove the excess ink. Here's another gasp moment. I'm going to go into my pink now. And you get very little. You can do those mix and match. I'm not getting a ton of ink on it for some reason for my pink. Maybe I've just used my pink too much. And there you go. So you can use these cross colors. I don't know that I would recommend going from, say, your yellow to your navy, or your navy back to your yellow. Maybe keep like a light brush and a dark brush, but definitely it is possible. And the best way to clean it is to just go off on your scrap paper until it goes clear. And that's the same that goes with these guys. When you're done, just kind of scribble off your paper and remove as much extra ink as you possibly can. So these are the ergonomic ones. We are getting in. There are some slightly smaller ones as well. They were on pre-order. I'm waiting for them to come in. Pros and cons, again, you can cover a lot of great area. As Rosalind said, you can use it to create over an embossed paper or an embossed image. Where this is challenging, because of the large surface, is with a stencil, that you can't really get in and say, okay, well, I just want this little heart to be colored, where a brush, you're going to have a lot more targeting. Just food for thought. One last thing I'm going to show you is the opposite direction of this. So these guys came out first, then they went bigger, and then they went smaller. So these are tiny little, and this is kind of coming full circle in this presentation, in that these are tiny little finger daubers, very similar to these guys, but instead of the foam on it, you have your individual bristles again. So if you like the control of a finger dauber, but you like the look better of the bristles, then these are a great option for you. Sorry. I will say my one struggle, if you will, is the hole is bigger on these brushes. So I find I can't just put it on my finger like I do these and, you know, kind of walk around and do my thing and move my stencil and everything else. They are a little bit bigger, so you do have to make sure you hold them. I usually put it on my index finger and hold it with my middle finger and my thumb. But as Rosalind just said, these stencil like a dream. So I'm going to go here into my hearts. And voila. You get these in a full set. So once again, you can have a whole set, one for each color, and they do stack. So in my little toolkit, I keep them all stacked. The only thing I wish is that if they had given you a cap for the top one, so I just take a little bit of saran wrap usually and just kind of wrap it loosely over that top one so I don't get ink everywhere. So lots of different options for you from a blending thing. I do encourage you once again to try different things. These guys are awesome, love them, but I like to have a little bit of everything kind of in my stash so that if I'm doing a different project, I can try different things. Yes, Margaret, these are really hard. I mean, I do have fat little fingers, but you just make sure you hold it snugly. You probably could also just take some craft foam and rub those, run that inside so that you've just got something to grip. It is doable. It's just a little bit more finicky than this guy. I did bring up some other samples of paper as well, because that does affect what your blending is. So if you're having trouble blending, it could be that the paper you're using is a little bit different. I prefer to use the Neenah Classic Crest Solar White. It just got a really nice smooth finish, and that's how you can see we get these smooth blends. This is just American Craft textured paper, and this is why you don't want to use texture. Let me grab this. When you do, well, I shouldn't say you don't want to use it, you just want to have a specific purpose. When you go in here, all of a sudden, that texture is really emphasized. So you do have to be careful what kind of paper you're using. You could just use a smooth, say American Crafts, but some paper I find, and I'm going to say that say it this way, they're spongier in that they soak in the ink a little bit faster. And what the nice thing about the Neenah is that it has a bit of a coating on it, so you have time to work it and blend it before it sinks into the paper. And it gives you that chance just to kind of smooth out your edges, whereas some paper, even though it feels smooth to our touch, you'll find that it resists the brushes, it resists the bristles in it, and just you feel like you're fighting it. I can't describe it any other way. You'll feel like you're fighting that paper to get that smooth blend, and you shouldn't have to fight it. This should be easy. It should be relaxing. It should be just as seamless as you want it to be. The other paper I really like to use, and once again, it just gives you a slightly different look, is the Elizabeth Craft Soft Finish. So this is very similar to the Neenah in that it's, you know, it's really designed for blending and that kind of thing. Oops, I just dropped the packaging. But again, I will point out, and it's not going to be, it's really hard to see even in person, so you probably won't be able to see it on the camera. This has a very slightly pebbled surface to it. And so it will give you a different look. You can probably see a little bit better here with the ink on it. But it's a beautiful paper. It's a nice weight, and It just gives you a little bit of a different look. So that is the nuts and bolts of blending brushes. Now, I did say that one of the best ways to clean your brushes, at least while you're working on a project, is simply to kind of scribble off onto your paper on the side. That'll get rid of any excess that you've got in your brushes. And even when you first tap into the ink pad, you kind of want to tap off and just get any little extra bits, of that ink off, so that when you blend, you're not leaving little splotches. From time to time, though, it is worth it to actually clean your brushes. And that's why, my pink one is now looking really pink and my yellow is looking really yellow, just because when the cleaning process, it did stain the bristles a little bit. But here is the best way to do it. You can take something that's got just a little bit of a texture to it, or we do have these brush cleaning tools, and I've got just a little bit of water here. Normally I would do this under the tap, but I can't take my camera here with me to the tap, so just bear with me. I would take, let's go with the yellow one since I've done it before. So I've got my little scrubby here. What I would do is just take a tiny little bit, just a little, pea-sized amount of gentle dish soap. You can do very gentle hand soap as well. Don't do anything that has too much antiseptic or antibacterial thing. You want it nice and gentle, and you're just going to scrub. And you can see all that extra yellow ink that's coming out. And like I said, it's easier to do it under a tap, and you want to get this to the point where it's running clear. But you can see even right now, look how clean those bristles are compared to what they were when they had ink in it. And you don't think about that. You don't think about that buildup. This is especially important if you are using your brushes with oxides or pigment inks or anything that is thicker. I know there are some people, my good friend Jen Shirkus does not like to use the brushes on, I must have pink on my thumb here. She does not like to use the brushes for her oxides. She prefers the foam. I don't mind using the brushes in oxides. Just know, though, that that pigment is going to get up in between those bristles. And so you just want to keep cleaning them. And I didn't grab any paper towels, so just bear with me. Make sure you squeeze out all the paper, not all the paper, all the water. And then when you let them dry, what I did when I cleaned mine is I just got like a little bin. You want them to dry as much as possible with the bristles down. So you want to try and find something that will hold your bristle or your brushes so that the bristles can go down and keep their shape. And now I'm just making a bigger mess. So I'll clean this better under the tap, but you can see how the yellow completely came out of those bristles when you clean them. You do not need to do this every single time you craft, but if you use them a lot, you probably want to have a regular schedule for cleaning your brushes, just to keep them fresh, just to keep them soft and pliable and blending the way you want. Especially if you are, so again, if I'm using this on a light yellow as well as a dark yellow, there is going to be cross-contamination over time. So keeping those bristles really clean will help you get that color integrity that you really want. So hopefully that answers a lot of your questions about blending brushes. They are fabulous tools. Each one has a different purpose. Each one has a different result. And once again, last time I'm going to say it, practice makes perfect. So give it a few tries. If you're trying something new, give it a few tries, couple different projects, couple different papers, even just a couple different days. Sometimes it's just your mood that changes how you're doing things. But definitely give ink blending a try. You can create some really, really amazing things. What brand are these colored ones? These ones are Tailored Expressions. to my knowledge, they are the only ones that have the colored ones. So there is a 10 pack that has most of the primary colors: red, yellow, orange, green, blue, purple. I think there's a gray one for neutrals. And then they have come out with a second set. I believe it's a 5-pack that has pastel handles. The Gina K ones, they come in 2 packs, 4 packs, and then there is what they call, or what we're affectionately calling, a 10-pack starter kit. So it does come with 10 brushes. Just getting the box open here. It also comes with a round brush caddy, and it comes with these little collars. So what these do is they snap around the neck of your brush, so that way you know, okay, well, this is my pink brush, and this is my blue brush, and this is my green brush. So that all comes in that starter pack of the Gina K brushes. If you already have brushes, we do have these brush caddies on their own. The round ones we are out of stock on, but I just placed a reorder earlier in the week. We also have these ones. Try not to drip it in the water here. This one's called the Peacock Fan, because when you get down to the bottom ones here, they all kind of fan out so that you can see all your colors at once. So lots of different options for brush caddies. Tailored Expressions originally came out with a bit of a carousel, but unless you got it put together exactly right, it did have challenges with falling apart. They have a new, I'm going to call it a bar, almost like a power bar kind of thing, but it's got the little slots that you can use for brushes, your scissors, your X-Acto knife. So, and it's really nice and weighty, so even with the brushes standing in them, it's not going to topple over. There are lots and lots of options out there, so just go and check our website. We do have lots of those options, or feel free to drop a comment here on this video, or email me at customerservice@craftersworkshop.ca. Happy to tell you about your options, show you what you can get, send you pictures, send you videos, all that good stuff. So with that note, it looks like I've got a bit of a mess here to clean up, and then it's lunchtime. Oh, Matt brought up, he heard me. This is what the bar tool tray from Tailored Expressions looks like. It's got this flexible rubber insert, but it's got a white bottom, and it is quite weighty, so you don't have to worry about everything tipping over on your table, your counter, your craft table. The one thing that I do find with all of these brush caddies is that they are not super portable. So if you were going to, in the day, in the future, when we can do this, when you're going to a crop or a class, I wouldn't take my tray with me unless, again, you put it in a giant Ziploc bag just to keep everything together. All right, so that's it for me today, ladies. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday. Don't forget to tune back in here at 7 o'clock tonight for What's New. And I'll have lots of stuff, including the brand new Avery L release. I've got some new stuff from Elizabeth Crafts. And we'll see what else we can pull out of boxes to show you guys. I'll be back here tomorrow at 11. Not sure what we're going to talk about yet, but we'll do something educational like this. I feel like we're in education week this week, and I've got lots and lots of ideas in my resources. So we'll see you tomorrow, or well, hopefully see you tonight at 7. Otherwise, we'll see you back here tomorrow at 11. Take care, everyone.